Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May 2023 market analysis for Gilroy, California, where we take a look at all the real estate numbers to calibrate ourselves to where Gilroy is at. It is reaching that hot time of the year. As I record this, we've got temperatures in the morning already hitting 80, 90 degrees. So a big turnaround here in the South Valley in terms of weather. And as we all know, the better the weather, the better the activity in the real estate market. So we're going to see how that affects the real estate market for Gilroy, Morgan Hill, San Jose, the entire Santa Clara County area. But for right now, let's focus on May. Now, before we jump in and take a look at it, let me introduce myself. My name is Robert Whitelaw. I'm a licensed real estate broker right here in Santa Clara County, servicing the entire county since 1988. You can find me at soldbyrobert.com if you're interested in getting access to any of the tools that I offer for buyers and sellers. You can find them right there at the top of the page. You don't have to dig. Just go right to soldbyrobert.com and you'll find amazing tools for folks who want great information on their home's current value and how to tap into the equity of your home, or discover what the equity is, or do some what-if scenarios on refinancing or potentially renting your home. All those tools are there. So it's a great suite of tools for my homeowners. For my folks out there looking to start their home search, I got a great search tool for you. In fact, I've even got several different tools that you can use to approach the process in some pretty creative ways. So feel free to kick the ball off right there at soldbyrobert.com. Now, also, I do a weekly podcast in addition to these real estate market updates, and there's a monthly coffee and real estate live chat where you can come on and ask your questions right then and there, and we can discuss what our local markets are doing. So make sure to join in on that. And again, you'll be able to find information on that on the front page at soldbyrobert.com. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about Gilroy. So as we first look into the total active listings for May of 2023, let's keep in mind what this number is. It's the total inventory. So for you buyers out there, it's the total number of homes you had to choose from in Gilroy in 2023 for May. And for those of you who were trying to get your home sold in Gilroy, this was your competition. This was how many homes you were competing against in the market in Gilroy. Now, we can see that we've had a pretty dramatic drop in the overall inventory in Gilroy since the same time last year. And just to refresh everyone's memory, when you're looking at this chart on the screen right now, you'll see that over to the right, you've got two Mays, May of 2023 and May of 2022. I just like to have them grouped all the way over to the right so you can visually see the difference between the two. And of course, May is also included in the graph going back so that we can take a look at month over month what the changes have been. Now, overall, it was a 29% decline from the same time last year. And last year, that number stood at 87 homes for sale. This year, we're down to 62 homes. And really, a number of homes on the market has not fluctuated much this year. We started off in the year with 55 homes, and before that in December, 58 homes. And then we went to 49, then to 56, then to 60, then to 62. So not a whole lot of fluctuation. We didn't see the big ramp up in inventory that is typical for the beginning of the season in Silicon Valley and specifically in Gilroy. If you look back to last year, in April and May of last year, you can see that March, April, May, we saw dramatic increases in inventory. And we just didn't see that this time around. So we'll take a look at these slides coming up and see if we can't suss out why that's the case, why inventory has remained so incredibly low. But the other number to take in consideration here is the month of inventory. We have 1.6 or about 1.5 months of inventory in Gilroy. And what that number means is if we froze the total inventory at the number it's at right now, and we froze the number of homes sold per month right now, we would only have 1.5 months of inventory on hand, which is a strikingly low number and would normally be an indicator that we're in a seller's market, but obviously we are not. Now, Gilroy is different. If you've watched my Santa Clara County, San Jose, or Morgan Hill market analysis videos, you're going to see some differences here, some pretty stark differences in terms of what's happening with prices here versus some of these other communities in the county overall. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at new listings for May of 2023. We can see that compared to the same time last year, the number of homeowners who decided to put their homes on the market declined by 31%. So we had 63 homes added to the marketplace in May of 2023. We had 95 homes added last year at the same time. So far fewer homeowners are thinking that this is the time that they want to sell their home. There's a variety of reasons for that. Over the last couple of years with COVID, one of the major concerns for sellers was simply not wanting folks walking through the house. They just didn't want to expose themselves to that. Right now, the primary concern is interest rates. Since interest rates went up March of last year, sellers will have to become buyers. If you're going to sell your home, you have to buy another one. And some of the folks I talk to have 2.5% rate loans, 3% loans. and they're just not interested in finding themselves in a situation where they would have to finance some amount of money at 7% or 6.5%. So I think that's one of the major things that has sellers holding back and not joining in and trying to get their homes marketed. As far as trends are concerned, we can see that between April and May of last year, we had an increase in total inventory. Between April and May of this year, we saw an increase. We've actually had pretty steady increases starting with January, which is very normal. This is the season, right? May is typically the last peak month. April and May often compete with each other to be the peak month for these kinds of numbers. You can see last year, May and June, or April and May, were kind of the peak, 80 in April and 95 in May, with a decline sharply in June and then a little bit of an uptick in July. I would expect to see the same sort of dynamic. I would expect in June to see fewer homes on the market for seasonal reasons, and also just because I think far fewer sellers are going to have their minds changed relating to some of the market influences that are keeping them off the market right now. So I'm not seeing a big change there. I don't know if I mentioned overall that was a 31% drop from the same time last year in terms of the total number of homes that got listed in May of 2023. Now, as we can see from the homes sold numbers for May of 2023, Gilroy had another decline in the total number of homes sold, down 27% from the same time last year. Now, last year we had 55 homes sold in May of 2022. In May of 2023, that's down to 40 homes. And again, if you take a look at the peaks, April and May tend to be the peaks. So we are now exiting what is typically the most robust period for the yearly market. So if we take a look at that, and realize that there's not a very good chance of us seeing more homes sold moving forward. Likely we're just going to see declines from here as we did last year. May we saw a decline from 55 to 48, then to 37, then to 38, then to 43. And that was really the peak for the later part of the year up in September. And then we saw a steady decline until December and January, where it was 19 homes sold for both December and January. So this should be it. We should see things decline from here, which is not a great thing, but there are some different influences going on with Gilroy. Gilroy is getting much more attention than lots of other areas because I think it offers a higher level of affordability, and folks are moving south in terms of their home search. So they don't want to change the quality of the home that they're looking for. They don't want to reduce the amount they're willing to spend. They're willing to spend a certain amount for a certain type of home, and with current interest rates, that kind of home gets further and further out of reach when they're looking in the center of Silicon Valley or in Morgan Hill. So that's been driving them down to Gilroy, and we're going to see the effect that that's had on average prices, which is really kind of interesting. So where are things going to go from here? As I said, my guess is just straight down from here. I don't know how dramatic it'll be. It might just be relatively flat, but my guess is we're going to see some declines. And there's no question in my mind, once we hit the end of the summer season, once we get to say September, after that, we will see more dramatic drops in the total number of homes that get sold in Gilroy. Average original list price, and I like to use original list price. Most other agents or folks reporting on data don't use it as a number to review. I like to use it because it gives us an insight into what the expectations of sellers are. It's a gut check. What were sellers expecting when they listed the home? So for the very day it went onto the market, what was the home listed at? And that's what this number represents. Now, from the same time last year, in May of 2022, this number stood at 1,333,000. This year, it's 1,153,000. So a very substantial drop, 13.5% drop, in fact. In terms of trends, it's a little bit harder to figure out because remember, Gilroy has a very diverse market. We have some homes on the northeastern side of town that are multiple millions of dollars. We have homes in the southern and central area that are far less, sub $1 million homes. So because of the small sample size of homes that would get listed, because remember, new listings was only 63 this month, one super high-priced home can throw this number out of whack. So it's important here when looking at this particular chart to get a feeling for what the trend seems to be. And we can see that in general, it feels relatively flat to me with a little bit of a decline. We saw December was the lowest point. That typically happens. The winter months tend to be, so the seasonal influence on price tends to be there. So my guess is this number will continue to be flat moving forward. And I wouldn't expect to see a big jump here, at least not one that would be more of a market indicator rather than a single instance of a higher priced luxury home selling in the market in Gilroy. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at average sales price. So this is what the homes actually sold for. And take a look at that. That is a green number. We actually had an increase in Gilroy. That beats out the county. That beats out San Jose. That beats out Morgan Hill. All of those areas had average sales price declines over the year. Gilroy is the only place that had an increase by 1.89%. Morgan Hill had a 14% decline. San Jose had a 9% decline. The county in general had a 3.3% decline. So this is really bucking the trend in terms of what's happening on a year-to-year comparison basis with all the other markets that surround Gilroy or that are part of the county that we review on a regular basis. So last year, homes were selling for $1,212,000 on average. This year, $1,235,000. And again, I think we're seeing more flat performance really since February. And I think, again, some of the reason for this is folks were taking that amount they were able to spend based on current interest rates and moving it from places up north. Folks I talked to who are shopping in Gilroy are moving their searches. I have active searches going on right now for folks where they started off looking in San Jose, Sunnyvale, South San Jose, Almaden, East San Jose, and they've first started adding Morgan Hill and then started adding Gilroy. And now I'm starting to see those people more actively wanting to view those properties. So I don't think there's any question on what's really pushing this number, but it's interesting to see that migration is happening. It's also interesting to note that when we were talking original list price, that number was down 13.5%. So 14% when you're rounding up. So the folks in Gilroy are far more calibrated to the realities of the marketplace. Now, the original list price was actually up overall in the county, up overall in San Jose, down in Morgan Hill, as Morgan Hill for a long time has not been in line really with what the market will bear. So one reason I think while Gilroy is so much better off is that for much longer, they've been pricing more appropriately for what the market is doing right now, which is, again, bringing more attention to that market because it's seen as a more reasonable spend on the home that you're going to get. All right, now let's take a look at the percent of list price. If all of these numbers were at 100%, that would mean everyone got their list price, what they were asking for. And this represents what the list price was at the time the offer was accepted. So as we were looking into the mindset of sellers a couple of slides back, this is an opportunity to look into a buyer's mindset. When you were faced with a certain price, what was the offer you were willing to make above or below the asking price? Now, in the case of Gilroy, in 2023, folks were offering 2.4% over asking price. Last year, that number was 106.3. Overall, that's a 3.9% change from last year in terms of reduction. What's interesting is, again, let's take a look at last year. April and May of last year were the peak. March, April actually were the peak. March was 108.2, April was 108.2, and then 106.3 for May of 2022, with a steady decline from there right on into wintertime where it went below 100%. So this is likely the highest we're going to see. Now, the one thing that may extend this perhaps another month or two in terms of staying over 100% is the additional activity that Gilroy is enjoying versus other communities, particularly since the amount of interest in the market has gone up while the number of listings has not. This is one way to explain why we're seeing the overall inventory numbers staying so low, because we're just seeing those homes selling off. So what's my estimation for Gilroy? I would guess we stay over 100% for the next month, with the possibility of July seeing a drop to just below 100%. Because the implication here is when you're getting higher than 100% numbers, the implication is you're getting multiple offers, right? There's no reason to go with over asking unless it's multiple offers, unless you're competing with someone else's offer. So clearly there is on average multiple offer scenarios happening in Gilroy that are pushing this number, as is true with the other areas as well. All right, total days on market. This is how long it's taking homes to get sold. We can see the trends here pretty clearly. In February, the reason why we had such a peak was because we saw more buyers come out. February typically is a big month, and we had more demand than we had inventory. So what ended up happening is we ended up selling off to buyers stale inventory that had been around for a lot longer. So that's why that number is so much higher, because remember, that measures how many days a home was on the market when it sold. So that number represents it took 62 days for the homes that sold in February to sell, right? So that makes sense. We simply saw that in January, folks were making offers on these homes. They sold in February or closed escrow in February, and then these numbers relating to how long it took them to sell got posted to the MLS. So that's why we see that dramatic big number, and a sell-off of homes that have been on the inventory for longer. And then we see an immediate drop all the way down to 34 days. Again, the reason for that is with the new listings that came up in January, February, and March, the homes that represented the best examples of the homes in those neighborhoods would sell first and quickly. So it dropped right down to 34 days, and then it dropped again to 29, and then in May it dropped to 23. Last year, that number was 9 days for May of 2022. That's a 156% increase from the same time last year, but 23 days is pretty respectable. Anything below 30 days, I think, is good. And particularly since I think 30 days has a more of a psychological effect on sellers. Once you hit 30 days, I think sellers start asking questions as to why we haven't sold yet and analyzing what options they may have to fix that problem. Next, total price reductions. This is one where Gilroy is a little bit more stable than some other areas. It actually went down this month to 20%. And I think that is a reflection of the fact that they have been pricing their homes better overall over the past few months, where other communities, particularly in Santa Clara County in general, saw dramatic increases. We saw bigger increases as it related to some other communities. If I'm not mistaken, we had it was almost 29% this month, I think, for Morgan Hill. But in any event, the fact that we've had a drop, because let's just talk about Gilroy here, the fact that we have had a drop is reflected by the fact that this market started off better priced. So we've seen fewer folks dropping their price. It's also a reflection of the fact that buyers are showing higher levels of interest in Gilroy to the point where they're getting higher sales prices on average compared to the same time last year, but are asking less than they were asking last year. So you mix those two things and that just generates buyer interest, and that tends to keep this number lower. It wouldn't surprise me if this number goes up a little bit in the coming months, but not as much as other communities since they were already priced fairly smartly for what the market's currently doing. But I would look for this number to stay relatively flat for the next month or two and then potentially go up once we get further into the year. Okay. That is all the numbers for Gilroy. For all of my buyers, sellers, or investors interested in Gilroy, I hope this has been valuable information for you. It's always, good information always helps make good decisions. So the goal here is always to leave you with more information on the table than we take up on your time. Absolutely hope we've achieved that this time around. If you'd like to get in contact with me, again, you can find me at soldbyrobert.com. Happy to help you with whatever goals you might have relating to the world of real estate. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.